Hello, 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 hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another meeting and Persian Power BI user group. We have a great session today with Nicola. Hey, mate, how are you?
Hi, Wahid. I'm good, thanks. And first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's always pleasure to join you for Persian Power BI user group meeting. Thank you.
Pleasure, Sato. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you again here. I think it's the second session in this user group with you. We had another one, I think, around more than 1 year ago. Actually, it was, I think, in the August last year.
Something around that. Maybe it's even
Yeah,
2 years ago. I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah.
yeah, it's my
That is
second
good.
time.
It's
Yeah,
good to have you again here. Thank you for
thank you.
accepting my invitation. It's great always to have you here, and I can't wait to learn from you, especially about this great topic, DP-600 exam, which is about the Microsoft Fabric, the Microsoft Fabric and the certification, new certification in that area. But before you start your presentation, there are some main questions in that area which I really like to talk about those questions and those topics with you. Uh, there are two. There is another certification, DP 300, and that's for Power BI. If I remember the name
It's
correctly,
PL 300.
PL 300. Yeah,
PL
yeah.
300. Yeah, yeah,
PL 300. Yeah, that
yeah.
was DA 100 previously, but it
Yeah,
changed to that
exactly.
one.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah. So what is the difference between these two? And then if someone has that certification, what this certification will add to that one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, DP-600 is, in my opinion, like a natural successor after PL-300. So, if you already passed
Mm,
PL-300, that means that you are proficient with Power BI to, let's say, intermediate level of skills relevant for Power BI. Uh, and this one gives you like a more broad understanding of Power BI as a tool and as a platform, PL-300. DP600
mm,
is more focused, so it's focusing on when we talk about Power BI topics. Obviously, it's more focused on advanced concepts, on data modeling concepts that are not so much covered in PL300, and DP600 doesn't contain any data visualization topics. So it's more on data modeling side, data transformation, stuff like that, and more advanced topics. So how you use Power BI, let's say, enterprise grade scenarios. That's the main difference.
that's great. And then this one is same as that other exam for the Microsoft. I think the time for this one is 100 minutes, if I remember that correctly, for DP 600.
No, I think it's 150. I think, as far as I remember, I took it like
Let
when
me
it was in
check.
beta. Maybe something changed after exam went out
Yeah,
of beta.
yeah. I just check it now on the website. It's 100 minutes. It was
Oh, okay,
150. That's
okay,
totally correct. I
okay,
think they
okay,
changed it
okay.
recently, and I saw
Maybe.
that yesterday. Yeah, because of that, I checked it again. So on the other hand, there is no connection between these two certification. You can take DP 600, and there is no predecessor for that one, so you don't need to get that PL 300 before this one.
Exactly. So they're
Yeah.
completely like individual certificates. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to pass PL300 before DP600 or vice versa. Uh,
Yeah.
PL300 is more for a data analyst persona, for that
Mhm.
type of data professionals, whereas DP600 is more like, it's called analytics engineer, but yeah, it's a combination of what we used to know previously as traditional BI developers or ETL developers or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Okay, so let me add your screen here and let's go through your presentation, mate. I can't wait.
Thank you. So
No
yeah,
worries, mate.
let's kick it off. Since we have a lot of things to cover, it's a really broad exam. Yeah, we jump straight into the action. Just a few sentences about myself. My name is Nikola. I'm originally from Belgrade in Serbia, but for last 8 years, I live in the wonderful city of Salzburg in Austria, where I work as an independent data platform consultant and trainer. And my main focus is working with Power BI and recently, of course, also with Microsoft Fabric. Other than that, I'm huge football and Barca fan, as you may conclude looking at the photo on the screen, which was taken last year at original Camp Nou before it was destroyed. So on our agenda today, first we will talk about what is DP-600. Although we already scratched the surface at the very beginning of the session. So some of the skills that are measured, core concepts and features to learn, some of the learning resources, and finally, I hope there will be enough time for your questions, and I'll do my best to answer. Wahid, please also feel free to jump and help me, because I know that you already also passed this exam. So yeah, maybe questions,
Yeah.
we can join our forces.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kick it off explaining by explaining what is DP-600. So it's a new certification, still new certification, the latest one when it comes to data platform certifications. You see the official name, Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate. We can discuss about this naming analytics engineer. Is it a buzzword or not? That requires another discussion, but the official name is Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate. It consists of just one exam. So unlike some previous certifications, which required you to pass 2 or 3 exams, this one is just one exam. And after this session, I hope you will understand from a high level perspective, of course, which features and services in Microsoft Fabric you need to know when approaching the DP-600 exam to approach this exam with a confidence. And what is the profile, candidate profile for this exam? So some of the responsibilities that are expected from the person that is called Fabric Analytics Engineer is to clean and transform the data, to build enterprise semantic models, incorporate some advanced analytic concepts, and apply and take care of development, analytic solution development life cycles. I won't go and read through these bullet points. I'll share this presentation afterwards, so you can do it on your own. But I think this one, the third part of this slide, the one on the right-hand side, is especially important because here I'm listing the skills that are tested on the exam and skills that are expected from you to have. So advanced Power BI skills, we already mentioned it's not like in PL300. So here are more advanced Power BI skills. Knowledge of Power Query and DAX, both languages that are relevant for Power BI, are also tested here in this DP-600 exam. Knowledge, at least basic knowledge about T-SQL and PySpark languages, and I would say intermediate to advanced data modeling concepts understanding. I'm going to discuss and show you what are those concepts, but this is from a high level perspective, which skills candidates should have before taking or for successfully completing DP-600 exam. Within the organizational role collaboration, how Fabric Analytics Engineer collaborates with other data professionals within the team. So you see it's somehow connected with different roles within the organization, different data and AI specific roles within the organization. So Fabric Analytics Engineer is expected to know a little bit about everything. That's the point of this illustration here. Let's break down the skills which are measured by DP-600 exam. So planning, implement as of today. So that's one important disclaimer from my side. Things are changing in Fabric world. As you know, there are updates like every month. There are tons of updates. So it may happen. No one knows that. It may happen that also DP-600 content change over time. Yeah, like for other exams we had previously. And as of today, as of August 2024, this is what is measured. So if you take your exam right now, this is what Microsoft will test you on. So planning, implementing, and managing solution is 10 to 15% of questions you will get. Prepare and serve data, that's the core part of the exam. So it takes almost half of the exam questions. Implementing and managing semantic models and explore and analyze data, these two portions are, let's say, equally important. and you will get approximately same number of questions during the exam on these two topics. In total, there are 57 skills measured. I think this is Microsoft's exam with most skills that are measured, and that tells you about the breadth of this exam and of this certificate, and how many different things you need to have under your tool belt to be able to successfully pass the exam. So we will cover following topics in today's session. So we'll talk about data engineering, Power BI, data warehouse, and data factory. If you follow Fabric development since it was generally since it was publicly announced last year, you may notice that there are some parts of the platform that are missing here, and that's because you are not going to be tested on these parts of the platform in DP-600. So there is data science, there is data activator, there is KQL. So those things are not included in DP-600. Therefore, they are not part of this session. That's the explanation why only these four. Only. So let's talk first about preparing and serving the data, implementing and managing semantic models, and then finally we will wrap it up with exploring and analyzing data. Again, explanation, if you recall from one of the previous slides about the skills measure breakdown, you might have noticed that there is also planning and implementing analytics management lifecycle, or I don't know the exact name. We are not covering that in this session because we have only 60 minutes, and this is the smallest portion of the exam, 10 to 15%. So I thought it maybe makes more sense to focus on those areas that covers remaining 90% of the exam. So some of the core concepts and features to learn. Before we jump into that, let's just do a really short introduction about Microsoft Fabric for those of you who maybe haven't heard or haven't had an opportunity to play with it. So at the core of Microsoft Fabric is OneLake. That's the central storage location for all Fabric workloads. That's the storage layer of Microsoft Fabric. It's called OneLake. Okay. So first of all, Fabric is a lakehouse architecture, and OneLake as a concept is at the core of this architecture, lakehouse, a lake-centric architecture. And then we have different experiences, as I call it here, players in Microsoft Fabric. Data factory, engineering, warehouse, data science, real-time analytics. Sorry, it's not anymore real-time analytics, it's real-time intelligence now. So this slide needs to be updated. That shows you how things are quickly changing in Microsoft Fabric world, and our very well-known friend Power BI. So these four, or to be more specific, real-time intelligence, I think it's now a separate experience. So these three, data engineering, warehouse, and data science, are under Microsoft Synapse umbrella, whereas the remaining components are standalone components. And as I said, those three will not be covered in this session because they are not part of DP-600. That's 10,000 feet overview of Microsoft Fabric. So let's talk about preparing and serving the data in Microsoft Fabric. First of all, you need to learn and understand how ETL processes work in general to be able to implement this into Microsoft Fabric realm. So ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. And if you used to work with other tools and products before Microsoft Fabric, so essentially from a general point of view, nothing changed. We have those three stages of working with data and preparing the data. So first stage, we extract the data, we are connecting to a data source, and we are selecting necessary data. Then in the next stage, based on business needs, we perform different transformation steps. So cleaning data, formatting data, changing data types, cleaning, removing duplicates, combining data from multiple different sources. So this is happening in transform stage. And then finally, we are loading this data into our dimension model, hopeful dimension model. So we split this data into fact and dimension tables. Now with these new platforms, there is also like a slightly modified approach to doing these things. It's called ELT. So all the steps are still here, but the order of execution is different. So maybe you want to extract the data from a data source, load it as it is within your staging area, for example, in Fabric. And then once you load it as it is, you perform transformation and then load it again into the next stage of this process. So it can be, think of ELTL. So extract, load, transform, and then again load to the next layer. And finally, we apply some post-load optimizations. Those are different performance tuning options, and you are going to be tested on different performance tuning options in Microsoft Fabric. This data loading process can consist of two different approaches. First one is full loading. That means I simply truncate the existing table that I have in my storage, and then I load full data from a data source again. This one has its obvious use cases, but it has a lot of downsides in real life scenarios, especially if your tables are big. And imagine that you need to load the data, that you need to load a table of, I don't know, 100 million rows. That means that each and every time you are going to truncate the table and again load 100 million rows. In this case, no history is preserved, so you are simply removing the previous version of the data and then just loading the new one. And this is usually most commonly is used for initial load or for refreshing some smaller tables. And then we have incremental loading, which is the most common approach in nowadays, especially when working with large amounts of data, where essentially we are just appending data to tables, and we track if something changed. If that changed, we update those records. If there are no changes, we don't touch the historical information. We just insert new data that came into a data source after we did a loading last time. It preserves the history, and it is really best suitable for doing frequent updates. So those are two different approaches to data loading. When it comes to tools that you have or options that are available within Microsoft Fabric for you to load the data into Fabric, there are multiple different options. And I would say, as a general rule, Fabric is all about the options. So for every single task, for every single operation, you have multiple tools at your disposal. And then it depends on different things how you are going to choose the most optimal one. So I will now list all these tools and some potential use cases, and when you can think of going one way or the other. So let's start with Data Flows Gen 2. Data Flows Gen 2, if you used to work with Power BI, or if you are working with Power BI, then you will find yourself in a very familiar environment. This is nothing else but a Power Query online, okay? The only difference is that you can now output result of your data transformation to Fabric. In this case, for example, you can output data to Lakehouse, to Azure SQL database. So you connect to a data source, you perform all your low-code transformations like you do in Power Query. And then finally, once you are happy, you can output this transformed data in a form of a Delta table within Microsoft Fabric. So this is how they look. And as I said, looking on the right-hand side, you will find yourself in a very familiar environment if you work with Power Query. Those are four destinations that are currently supported for Data Flows Gen 2. Some of the good and bad things about using Data Flows Gen 2. First of all, as Data Flows Gen 1, the old one that still exists in Power BI itself, it's aimed mostly towards business users. So no code or low code developers that need to transform data and store it in Microsoft Fabric. They are very good for optimizing performance because you just connect to data source once, you do all the transformations, and then result of these transformations can be reused multiple times downstream, reducing complexity and ensuring consistency and data quality by enabling users to clean and transform data before loading it. Some of the downsides: row-level security is still not supported, and you need a Fabric capacity, so data flows Gen 2 will not exist outside of Fabric world. So if you don't have Fabric capacity, you can't use data flows Gen 2. And I would say their main use case is when you need to transform the data before loading it into Microsoft Fabric. Because as you will see, there are other choices that might be more performant and more suitable for simply copying data as is from data source to Microsoft Fabric. So data flows Gen 2 predominantly when you need to do some transformations without coding. Another option is using Fabric notebooks, and this is a code-first approach where essentially within a notebook you can write a code. Code may come from different languages like PySpark, like Scala, Spark SQL, and so on. And you can also enrich your notebooks with adding comments through because Markdown is supported. This is also very common approach for data ingestion and data transformation. It's very powerful because it leverages distributed Spark processing engine, and for processing huge amounts of data, this one is probably the most optimal way to work with. So Fabric notebooks. You can connect to external data sources with a notebook, and then you can read and store results of your data then in a Fabric Lakehouse by writing to Delta or Parquet files. Also, there are certain features when working with PySpark that you need to keep in mind, especially regarding this exam. There are concepts like V-order, for example. V-order is a special type of optimizing the data during the write process, which enables faster data reading afterwards. That means once you connect to a data source, by default, all engines in Fabric will use this V-order algorithm in the background when writing data into Fabric. And then once the data is written in Fabric with this V-ordering applied, this means some sorting, special sorting order of the data within the file, then all the engines that subsequently read data will read this data faster, including Power BI. That's it's the most obvious beneficiary from this approach. So this is V-order, and this is Fabric exclusive feature. So V-order doesn't exist in other vendors like Databricks or something like that. V-order is something that exists only in Fabric. Also, there are certain commands for optimizing your tables, because tables consist of different number of files in the background. So it may happen that if you have a lot of files behind one table, the query runs slower, and you need to compress this huge number of smaller files into one bigger file in order to improve the query performance. For that, there are certain commands in PySpark, like optimize, for example, or if you want to get rid of files that are not referenced anymore, then you can use vacuum command. If you're a T-SQL person like myself, so you may want to take a look into copy statement in T-SQL. This one is very fast, but it has limitations in terms of which data sources you can use. Also, once you load the data into Fabric, you can then write your queries to combine data from lakehouses and warehouses with three-part naming. So lakehouse name, schema name, table name, and then you can combine this data across multiple data warehouses or lakehouses in Fabric. You can also create your tables using create table as select statement, and insert and select classic one from SQL Server days. Then another data loading option is Fabric pipelines. So pipeline is a tool which is predominantly used for data orchestration. This means that you can set the workflow of all the activities that are happening during your data loading process. To make it simple, let's say that I'm connecting to my Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account. So for example, I can bring this data as is into Fabric. Then I can run a notebook on top of this data to do some transformations to enrich the data. Then I can apply, for example, data flow I can use data flow to apply some additional transformations. And finally, as the last step, I can refresh my Power BI semantic model. So all of these tasks, all of these activities can be orchestrated within the pipeline. If you used to work with Azure Data Factory previously or SQL Server integration services, this is the use case for pipelines to orchestrate the order of execution within data loading process. This is done through activities. As I said, there are different types of activities like data transformation activities, like notebook or data flow, and also control flow activities. So different loops and stuff like that. All of these pipelines can be parameterized, and you can schedule a pipeline to run at a certain time. The most common activity is copy data, and this one enables you to, as its name suggests, connect to a data source and simply copy the entire data into Microsoft Fabric. This one is very handy for low-code developers. You can simply connect to a data source and bring the data as is into Fabric, and then do different things in different steps afterwards once the data is in Fabric. Another important concept for getting data into Fabric is called shortcuts. Shortcuts are, let's try to define it as simple as possible. So like in Windows Explorer, in File Explorer, if you have a file which is stored on your somewhere on your C drive, you create a shortcut on the desktop, and this is just a pointer to a file which is stored on your C drive. It's the same with OneLake shortcut. So you create a shortcut within OneLake, and it's just a pointer to a file with physical data which is stored somewhere else. And when I say somewhere else, this can be internally somewhere else in Fabric. So I can create a shortcut in my Lakehouse 1, which will point to a table from Lakehouse 2. This is internal shortcut, but also it can be used for connecting to external data sources like ADLS Gen 2, Dataverse, Amazon S3. I think also Google Cloud is supported at this moment. So shortcut is a very convenient way to avoid physically moving the data from other location into Fabric. So it's just a virtual representation of the data which is stored somewhere else. Take a look at shortcuts. It's a very cool feature, and it's also something that you will get tested on in DP-600. This is an illustration how shortcuts can be leveraged for data mesh approach, and some of the benefits of using shortcuts listed here, which you can also take a look once you get the presentation. Now the next topic that I want to cover is how you organize the data in Fabric Lakehouse. You probably heard, if you're in data realm in the last few years, you probably heard about the Medallion Architecture. And again, same as for analytics engineer, we can argue if this is a proper naming or not, but still, just for the sake of simpler communicating stuff when it comes to organizing data in a lakehouse, I'll stick with this medallion approach, which separates data into three different layers: bronze, silver, and gold. That's why it's called medallion. Of course, in reality, you can have less than three. You can have more than three layers. It's up to you. You can call them however you want. It doesn't necessarily need to be bronze, silver, and gold. You can call them raw, validated, or and rich curated for the last layer. The key thing to keep in mind is that they represent different level of quality of your data. So usually in bronze layer, you bring data as is from external source in its original state. And that's great because then you can use this as a repository for archiving the data. That means if I need after 3 months to reload something, I don't need to go back to my data source. I can refer to my bronze layer and get data and process it from there. Be very careful because bronze layer is of the lowest quality. Data is of the lowest quality. It's unvalidated and stores data in different formats. It doesn't necessarily need to be Parquet or Delta. It can also be in CSV or JSON, so in its original form. And then the next stage is silver layer, where we somehow conform and clean the data from the bronze layer. So we take this data from the previous one, from the previous layer, and now we add some additional columns, do some data cleaning and so on. And this one already contains enriched and validated data for further downstream workloads. For example, for machine learning stuff or for some ad hoc analysis. So it's still not reporting layer. It's just a layer which contains cleaned and validated data. And usually, again, this is not a rule, but usually silver layer is modeled like a relational databases to a third normal, normalized to a third normal form. And here you already start to store the data in those formats that are optimal for analytic scenarios like Delta and Parquet. And finally, gold layer is this icing on the cake where we implement some additional business logic, some specific project requirements on our data, where we additionally clean, refine our data, input KPIs, and so on. And in this layer, you prepare data for reporting. So it's usually a Kimball-style star schema, especially if you use Power BI as a reporting tool on top of the data. You probably know that Power BI loves star schema, and star schema is the preferred way to model data when working with Power BI. So in gold layer, you prepare data to be like a star schema, and preferably in Delta. If not possible for whatever reason, then Parquet, but nothing else than that. Preferably Delta, because then you can use Direct Lake and all the other engines that can read Delta format. Things to keep in mind when you're organizing your data in Fabric Lakehouse and which way you want to go. How much data are you working with? So performance might differ significantly between notebooks and data flows Gen 2, for example, based on the amount of data you have. How complex transformations you need to make? Are those transformations really something that can be done with one line of PySpark or T-SQL code, or do you really need to apply some M magic within data flows Gen 2? How often you need to move data between the layers, and what tools are you most comfortable with? So as I said, for example, I'm a SQL person. I'm not familiar with PySpark, so I'm probably go T-SQL way whenever possible. Those are things to consider when you are implementing a Medallion architecture in Fabric, and which tools you can or should use for different tasks. So previously we explained Medallion architecture in general. This one gives you a hint about which tools and which features of Fabric can be used to implement this Medallion architecture. So as you see, for ingesting raw data, you can choose between pipelines, data flows, and notebooks. And it's not that choosing one eliminates others, so you can combine them, but those are options that you have at your disposal. Again, for then moving data to a silver layer, it's data flows or notebooks. And finally, for gold layer, when we apply additional transformations, it's building a semantic model for Power BI reports or querying data directly through SQL Analytics endpoint. I already mentioned at the beginning that data modeling is a big part of this exam, and some of things that you need to know or need to learn if you don't know. First of all, dimensional modeling. So you are going to be tested about fact tables, dimension tables, how to split data into those two different types of tables in dimensional modeling. What is the difference between surrogate key and alternate key? So those are things that you need to know. Also, denormalization is one of the topics included in the exam, and things like implementing calendar dimension and implementing slowly changing dimension. For those of you who maybe don't know, slowly changing dimension is relevant for this Kimball style star schema modeling and how you handle attributes that are changing within the dimension. So it's the emphasis is not on a slow, because attributes can change fast also, but it's how you handle changes that happen to certain attributes. And in most cases, you are going to finish up with slowly changing dimension type 2, but you should keep in mind that there are 6 or 7 different types of slowly changing dimensions. But I suggest you focus on understanding 0, 1, 2, and 3 potentially. Some other concepts and features to learn when it comes to this part of preparing and serving the data. For data modeling and data transformation, take a look at concept of bridge tables. When you have many-to-many relationships, how to break this down with bridge tables. Denormalization, I already mentioned that. Merging and joining the data. So inner join versus a left outer join versus cross join and so on. So learn the difference between these join types and different data cleaning techniques using either Power Query or Fabric notebooks. When it comes to performance optimization, you are going to be tested on how to identify bottlenecks in different areas of data loading process. For example, if there is a query falling within data flows Gen 2, and how to resolve performance issues either by applying and making sure that your queries are falling to a data source or rewriting your T-SQL queries, for example, to improve the performance. Next big topic is implementing and managing semantic models. Here you need to learn about direct lay because that's a brand new thing in Microsoft Fabric, and it's shown to us as a revolutionary feature, which I think honestly it is. And there are certain prerequisites, so please keep this in mind when you start preparing for the exam. What are prerequisites for direct lay? Because direct lay will not work by default in all cases. So you see on your screen what are prerequisites and what is reordering that we already explained. So you need to have data stored in Delta tables. If it's not in Delta table, no direct lake is possible. So this is the architecture, Power BI architecture before Fabric, import mode and direct query mode. In the import mode, we essentially copy the data. We create a copy of the data from a data source within Power BI semantic model. It's super fast, but we have issues with data duplication because essentially we just create another copy of the data, and data latency because we need to refresh our semantic model in order to have the latest data available in Power BI reports. Whereas direct query solves these problems of data duplication and data latency, but it can be utterly slow. So performance is the main downside of direct query, and that's where this direct lake concept jumps in and tries to leverage all of the benefits of both import and direct query mode. So with direct lake, data is still stored within one lake, within original data source. So you don't load the data into Power BI semantic model. And during the query time, Power BI takes some of the columns that are necessary for this query, loads them into a memory, and from that point in time, it behaves the same as import mode. So you have a performance of import mode, or almost as in import mode, with this no data latency and no data duplication concepts that are relevant in direct query. But direct lake still has a lot of limitations. I will list them here. One of the biggest ones is the T-SQL views are not supported. So if you use T-SQL view to encapsulate the logic within a Fabric warehouse, you can't use direct lake. Or to be more precise, you can, but then your queries will fall back to direct query. direct lake will not work. Also, no DEX calculated columns, which is maybe not that bad, but still, if you're using DEX calculated columns, you can't use direct lake storage mode. They are not supported here. No composite models, and as I like to stress here, always check the list of current limitations. Things are changing, so something that is a limitation as of today may be resolved in a few weeks or few months. Who knows? Then you also need to know how to use external tools to work with Power BI semantic models, namely DAX Studio and Tabular Editor 2, the free version. So this is like a general overview of use cases for DAX Studio and for which use cases you are going to use DAX Studio. And this one is for Tabular Editor. DAX Studio is more for troubleshooting your DAX queries and for writing DAX queries. Tabular Editor is more for manipulation with your semantic model. So you can apply different changes to your semantic model through Tabular Editor. With DAX Studio, it's more about troubleshooting and writing DAX queries and understanding performance using Vertipec Analyzer, of course. Some of the concepts that you need to learn in this part with managing and optimizing semantic models, you need to learn about composite models, what they are and what are their use cases. I list here some of the best practices. So you need to know about composite models. You need to know about aggregations. How do you define aggregated tables? How you set a proper storage mode for each table in a composite model that uses Power BI's built-in aggregations. Row level security, which is a very important feature when we want to limit access to specific attributes like country, like product, like category, and so on. And here are the differences between static and dynamic row level security. In DP-600, you're going to be tested on dynamic row level security. So there are certain DAX functions like username and user principal name that you need to understand in order to be able to apply dynamic row level security. Some of the considerations for row level security, and finally, concept which is similar to a certain extent to row level security is called object level security. But the main difference between these two, except the fact that row level security, you essentially restrict access to specific attributes. With object level security, you restrict access to certain objects like columns, like tables, and so on. And the difference is that object level security completely removes this object from a data model, which is not the case with row level security. There is row level security just hidden. Here it doesn't exist at all in semantic model. And at this moment in time, object level security can be defined only by using external tools, Tabular Editor in this example for DP-600. So you can't define object level security in Power BI Desktop yet. Some other concepts and features to learn related to this sub area of managing and optimizing semantic models. Variables when it comes to DAX, so variables, iterator functions, window functions, information functions. Those are relevant for DAX. Then other Power BI stuff like calculation groups, field parameters, dynamic format strings. So this is all listed under topics that are going to be part of DP-600. And for performance tuning, understand how to use DAX Studio to troubleshoot DAX query performance, or how to use Tabular Editor 2 to enhance your data model and apply, for example, object level security. Also, you need to learn incremental refresh, how it works in Power BI, which parameters you need, what are their reserved names, and so on and so on. And our last part of session that we're going to talk today is about exploring and analyzing the data. So with PySpark, you can use different options, of course, to understand what is going on with your data. If you run this describe command, then you will see for each data frame object, you will see this list of information. You can also group and aggregate data with PySpark, something like this. This is a simple example of grouping and aggregating data in PySpark data frame. With Power Query, if you work with Power BI, then you're probably familiar with these profiling options that you can find under View tab in Power Query. And essentially, you can see the column distribution, the column quality, number of distinct values, number of errors, and so on. So make sure to remember where you can find each of these functionalities. Querying data by using SQL, the main focus in DP-600 is on analytical scenarios, obviously. So window functions, make sure to learn window functions in T-SQL. This means that you need to understand how to perform different calculations over a set of rows. So this over keyword defines the window of these rows where you want to apply a certain calculation. Then this one, partition by, is optional if you want to break down your rows into smaller subsets. Then you use partition by. And finally, order by, depending which function, which window function you're using, order by might be mandatory or not. Ranking functions that you need to learn, row number, rank, and dense rank. Here I gave you 3 examples to understand what is the difference on the same data set. What is the difference between row number, rank, and dense rank, and which results you're going to get. Offset functions, finding next value or previous value or first or last value within the predefined subset of rows. So lag, lead, and first value, last value functions. Make sure to understand how those 3 work. And other concepts and features to learn here, prescriptive and predictive analytics, classic T-SQL. So you need to know the order of commands within a SQL statement. So it's not from blah, blah, blah select. It's the other way around. So you need to know this classic T-SQL stuff. And you also need to understand how you can query data within semantic model by using XML endpoint and from DAX Studio. So how to write a query within a DAX Studio that connects to your semantic model and returns results. Some of the learning resources, I'm shamelessly sharing my own blog because you will find a dedicated page, DP-600, where I collect all the blogs and videos that I created so far for learning DP-600. 2 other great resources that are mentioned here: Serverless SQL, created by Andy Cutler, also focuses mostly on SQL part of the exam. So if you want to learn that part, go to Andy's blog. Also, Kevin has a great blog with a lot of different topics covered for DP-600. And I would say the one that is not mentioned here, but this absolutely deserves to be mentioned, is Will Needham YouTube channel, Learn Microsoft Fabric, which is also amazing source of great videos, great explanations about Microsoft Fabric as a platform in general, and it's totally free. So also check that one. And I think we are now ready for Q&A. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a great, clear presentation, and I believe that cover all the components of this exam. There is a question here. I will add it to the screen. Hamali asked, could you please clarify the extent to which knowledge of the ELT or ETL processes is required for the DP-600 exam? And then she added, are there specific scenarios or tools related to ETL or ELT that we need to be proficient in?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good question. So to which knowledge, I would say it's not anything advanced. So you don't need to create any scripts for, I don't know, implementing incremental loads with providing some scripts and so on. But you need to understand the process itself, and you need to understand when to use which. So if they ask you to orchestrate I don't know, notebook 1 executes after data flows gen 2, then you need to use pipeline for that. So it's not possible the other way. So to understand the main purpose of each of these tools that exist in Fabric: pipeline, data flow, notebook, store procedure, whatever, and to understand in which scenario to go which way. So if you need just a simple one-to-one copy of the data from a data source in Fabric, you will probably not use Data Flows Gen 2. You can, but this shouldn't be your default choice. So things like that.
Yeah, perfect. That was the only question here, but just one question. I remember there was some challenge before with some, discount code. I don't know those challenges are still live and people can use that or not. Do you have any information? Is there any challenge or any way to get some of those discount code for taking this exam?
Yeah, that's it was shared previously with those cloud skills challenges. As far as I know, currently there is no challenges running, but I'm pretty sure because fall is coming and the Fabric conference is coming, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
they will organize something like that. So probably yes, probably in next month or two, we'll again have some cloud skills challenge. Yeah.
No, there is only one last question just come to here. So, would you recommend completing the Microsoft Fabric applied skill module before attempting the DP-600 exam?
That's a great suggestion indeed. So yes, Microsoft introduced those applied skills. I think in Fabric, which is relevant for DP-600, you can do a lake house and warehouse. It's a great way to practice. It's more practical, so you will be asked to build something, really writing a code and stuff like that. So it's more practical, but it gives you a great hint about what is going to be tested in the exam itself. So yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So thank you so much, Nicola. It was a
Thank
great
you.
presentation. It's always great to have you in this user group. I hope we will have some other meetings and sessions in the future. Thank you so much, man.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for reminding me, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.